Hi, welcome to Sanctus Viz Complete Guide. The first thing you may notice is that there are two files. One is the Sanctus Viz installation file, and the other one is the Sanctus Bake installation. If you already have Sanctus library, the baking add-on is the same. It comes with both products, so in that case, you won't have to install it. Okay, so we go to Edit Preferences. You go to the Add-ons tab, Install from disk. You search for the folder where you have the zip files to install. Click Install from disk, and you will have the add-on installed. Repeat the same for the baking add-on if you don't have it already. Here you can find the add-on documentation. Clicking this button, where you will find all the useful information, the different assets. You will also find the different parameters and what they do. There are also guides on how to use the different assets. We have interface, display panel. Here you have the panel on the viewport. You can toggle that with N. Some users complain about the space here. I added an option to remove this panel and instead use a shortcut. I will set a key here. And now if I press this combination, I have access to the panel, floating panel instead. That will be up to you. The thumbnail scale is the scale of these previews. The user interface concentrates basically in this panel here, but you also have one in the shader editor that for now has just one asset, but there will be probably more added in the future. As I mentioned in the previous chapter, you can remove the panel from here and use a floating panel instead. Here you can switch between materials and geometry nodes assets. This is to navigate the categories. You also have a search. And it will filter all the materials that are related to the keyword. Here you have the selected asset. You can navigate back and forward with these buttons here in the category. There's also always a link to the documentation. You can see some of the assets have a UV icon here. That means that they require to be UV unwrapped. There's also a button to add the assets to a favorite category. For example, if I use this asset a lot, I will add it to the favorites. You will see that now it's listed first and it has an icon there. And you will also have a new category here, My Favorites, where all the favorite materials are listed. In the case of the materials, you will see that you have two different buttons. One is to apply the material directly. The other one is just to import it to the scene. In some cases, you may want to just have the material and use it for something else. If you import the material, you can go to, for example, shading, and you will see that it is there, even if no object is using it. Here you have the material slots. In this case, we have just one slot. You can control it from here. It's basically the same we have here. You have the active object material parameters here. They are in different panels to organize them. For example, if I change the color of this material, and let's say I have a second object. So if I apply the same material, I will be prompted if I want to use the existing one, the one I'm using, or reimport a new copy of it. If I use the existing one, it will be blue because I changed it. if I reimport the asset, it will bring the default parameters. Let's say I want a different material in the eyes of the monkey. I can go to edit mode, select the eyes. In the material slots, I will create a new slot, assign these faces to the second slot. I can go back to object mode, and now I can select a different material. And since I have the slot 2 selected, I will apply the material to the slot 2. In the shaded editor, for now we only have a tool, but I will explain. This will be just group nodes. So you just select the asset, add group node, and you will have the node to use there. In the case of geometry nodes assets, you will see different buttons depending on the type of asset. I prepared this to make it easier to use. So for example, in this case, it needs to be applied to a mesh. So we select the mesh and apply to mesh, and it will transform it into something different or do something to it. For example, in this case, we have a place on surface, so it will place something on the surface of an object. I select my object, click, drag, and I will see the object there. And then, same as the materials, if you select the object and you are in the geometry nodes assets, you will see the controls parameters here, the controls and parameters here. We have some fabrics. There's leatherette. You can change the scale of the texture, the bump, colors. There's also fabric. You have the base color and also fibers that you can see add realism to the fabric, a bit of variation. There's also a fabric that you can use with any texture. Using just the Blender logo. In the other category, we have some concrete, aggregate concrete, marble, and porcelain. We're going to try, for example, this one. It has some small details. You can change it with the factor. There are different colors. We have also some marbles. And there's also concrete. And we also have this aggregate concrete with different colors. There's also a wide variety of glass materials. The table is using the tempered glass, for example, in this case. These materials are already prepared to affect the shadows and the light color if you're using cycles. We can, for example, change it to this one here. If you don't see the pattern, you may have to increase the bump. As you can see, the shadows also are affected. And you can always change colors and the different parameters. There are some classes with patterns when you can change the roughness in the different areas. And here we have some frosted glass. For example, we can try some of the ones for bases. One thing that I added to most tiles and bricks is the possibility to use bump or displacement directly in the parameters. You can check this. Of course, if you change from bump to displacement, you have to activate subdivision surface, adaptive subdivision, simple. I'm using Blender 5. And now we can change to displacement. I will exaggerate the height so you can see it. As you can see, we have real displacement now. If we go back to the bump, it will be just in the normals. And of course, adaptive subdivision is a bit slower, so depending on the distance or what you're doing, you may want to use bump instead. I created a wide variety of procedural tiles, and all the patterns are procedural, so you can change and create basically new shapes or new combinations. In this case, you will find, for example, flower and frame, and you can control, for example, the position of the frame, the thickness, the amount of petals of the central kind of flower. You can change the length and create new tiles, change the colors. And as you can see, there are many different patterns. I also created a specific one that you can use with your own textures. You can apply, go to the shading tab, and inside the node groups, if you're using an earlier version of Blender, you will have an icon here. Otherwise, you have to double click the group node and you will replace your tile here. The only condition is that this is a single tile, so it will replicate on each of the procedural tiles there. And we have different woods. One is for objects, basically like a sculpture or a small object made of wood. And one is used with UV maps, and it's basically an infinite surface of wood. So let's try. This is all materials are made to scale, so if you want to test them correctly, you will have to make objects to real world scale. And this particular material has the direction of the grain. So basically, in this case, the wood grain is going in the Z direction. If you switch that, here you can set it to 1 X axis. And here we have a randomized center. So if you put it completely in 0, you will see that the center of the tree basically goes along the x-axis. Y and Z. And you can randomize it out, so it's not exactly in the same in the center. We have some plastics. There are some that are transparent. There are also some micro-textured. We have some metals, aluminum. chrome plating. There's also sandblasted metal. And we also have some worn metal. I also created a UV tool that can basically unwrap your model in real time. It works with flat surfaces like floors, walls, and ceiling. I will show you a bit how it works. I will go to Geometry Assets, Tools. I will apply this. By default, it has just an example texture. But as you can see, I can go to Edit Mode and select some of these edges, extrude. And as you can see, I don't have to UV unwrap it. I go to this face. I can inset, extrude. If I go to shading, I have to check here what's the material used. In this case, example tiles for the surface. So I can edit it. And as you can see here, we can change the texture. The only condition is that you use this as your UV map instead of the regular UV map node. So you can also add all the textures you want if you want to add roughness, normal, or whatever. If you're using tiles like me, this texture is 3 by 3 tiles. So I specify this in the generator so that it can match one wall with the other. The alignment of the texture is done correctly. Otherwise, it can start failing. As you can see here, for example, they don't match. But if we set it correctly, it will always match. If the texture has tiles that are not 1:1 in aspect ratio, then of course it will match only with one of the walls. Let's say you want to use this with a procedural material. So we, for example, can use one of the tile patterns, let's say this one here. So I will import the material to the blend file. I can copy this, or let's go to the flower tiles material. I will use this here. Is basically the same node. It's just so you have it instead of having to go copy or whatever. So you can use this node directly. You can also use a mapping node in between if you need. And you replace the vector of the procedural material here. Now, the only thing we need to do is to tell this generator what material it needs to use. So it's still with the example tiles here. I will switch to the one I'm editing now. And as you can see, you don't have to do anything. It's already working. Now, to make it match, you will see that some of them won't align, and I will explain why. Because we come from a 3 by 3 texture. In the procedural materials, it's a bit more complicated to understand, but I will try to explain. We have a scale of 1, and we have a tile of 0.2. That means that in our virtual limits, the tile of 0.2 fits 5 times in the overall scale. So that means I have 5 by 5 texture. So as you can see that there, if I change this to 5, they will align again. You can use this with basically any tile in the add-on, and also, as I showed you, with PBR materials. And the good thing is, once you set it up, you can keep editing your geometry without having to do anything else. For example, I will show you here. If I inset this, extrude again, inset, extrude down, as you can see, it will be aligned, it will be already unwrapped, and the texture is not stretched. And also, if I create a separate object here and I apply the same material, I have to apply this and select the same material here. So 5 by 5. And as you can see, the scale is also consistent across multiple objects, which is very helpful also. We have auto bricks. That's a quick way to add bricks to a geometry. Again, this is for flat surfaces. If we use it, we can see this generates real geometry. To change the asset, you have to remove the old one. I'm working on having this automatically, but for now you have to do this, and you can apply the other one. There's also a custom one that is made to use a single texture that will have variation on each brick. So again, you will check what material is this generator using, bricks demo texture, and you can go to shading. And here you can change the texture. In this case, it uses this specific UV map that is adapted to work with this generator. So you can replace textures here. Here I'm using a single texture. I will show it here. And this mapping adds, you can change the rotations here. Or if this is the position, it offsets a bit the position on each brick. Same with the rotation, and gives the illusion that it's a different texture on each one. You can do the same with the roughness, normal. You can still always, if you need changes, change the size of the bricks here. The failsafe is basically if you have a high poly count mesh and you add the generator, so Blender doesn't freeze. If it has more than this amount of faces, it will ignore it. Here we have some tiles that are already designed and are procedural. You can change the color and the variation, etc. In this case, we have a tile that is 2 units wide by 1 unit in this direction. So, of course, we can only make it match with one of those sides. You have a parameter for that here or here. So you basically can align it with one of the axes there. The size of the tiles. This one also has a one that it's basically behaves the same way as the one on the bricks. Tiles demo texture, and we can replace this. Here you have this one it's changing a bit the brightness on the tiles. And the scale here, maybe 2. can shift the position on each. In this case, we have another one that is specific for one tile to be repeated. Let's say the client demands, I don't know, a specific tile. Now we will apply the tiles on surface single texture. It has a texture by default, but let's see, single tile texture. Now we can replace, you have the pattern of one single tile. It will replicate it on each tile. And again, you can still edit the geometry. The difference between tile separation and panel separation. Tile separation is basically this. And panel separation is the separation between different surfaces where there's an angle. So for example, if I decrease this, you will see how they get a bit closer. The idea is to make them look more or less the same. And there's a third special asset here. This one here is using real tile objects from a collection. So I have two different, let's see if I can show you. I have two different tiles, even with basic different geometry or topology. So in this case, I'm using two different tiles with different textures, and I place them in the same collection. I load that collection, and I can organize them in checkers or random, depending on what you're doing. If you only have one, the order is not important. And the only condition here or rule is that both have the same dimensions in width and length, or at least the same bounding box, because you can maybe want to add one that is, I don't know, rounded or is broken. I don't know. Also, try to keep low poly object to speed up the generator. You will see that in this case, we don't have the dimensions of the tile, because that will be measured from the real object. So you will decide the size of the tiles with the object that you create. Remember to apply the scale. Flooring is a bit more straightforward. One thing you can do, for example, I have this room. I can go to edit mode, select my floor, P, part selection, separate selection. And now I have this independently. I can remove the modifier and apply one of the floors. I will use first the deck, which has these separations that you can control independently, separations in this direction and between rows. Here you have the plank separation and the separation per row. The wood is, you can see the sides, how they have a different texture, even if it matches the one on the top. You wouldn't have this with a PBR material. Again, this is non-destructive. You can keep editing. The only condition is that it is flat. Extrude Y. We can take this one, extrude X. I can take this one here and Ctrl-Shift-B, bevel it. As you can see, the generator adapts. There's also some rotation in the planks. You can, like, let's increase this to make it obvious. You can control there the probability of a plank to have this rotation and the maximum rotation they can have in X and Y. And here you can see some of the other patterns. There are also some objects that you can use. I will show you, for example, this one. Place on surface. You select the one, click, and it will be parented to the object. You can edit this the same way we did everything else mostly. You go to the modifiers tab. This is the material being used picture. Be careful because sometimes this can have a 0.001, 002 if you have multiple instances of the asset. So in this case, we are going to edit picture. And in this case, we have to do two changes. One, change the image in the texture node. And also to adapt the aspect ratio, you have to go to the modifier and change this to the same picture being used. Then you can scale the entire thing, or the picture basically. This is a real size, so it will be 1 unit wide, and the height will be depending on the aspect ratio, and then you can change the other elements. There are also mirrors that work the same way, basically. Select the target object, place on surface. In this case, we are going to have to scale it down. Can remove the frame. The bevel also is optional. We also have some curtains. The room is a bit small, but we have the window width. The curtains length. And control to open and close them. If you have light coming through the window, you can change the translucent here. There's also something I have to adapt, but this is using curtain fabric. And I noticed that I left those without control and a bit too high. Because, for example, if you want to use a curtain white, as you can see, it's a bit grayish. So the ambient occlusion is too strong, and also the fabric shadow. So depending on what you're doing, you can manually change those. I will probably adapt that in the next update. And you can also change the color of the supporter there. And if it's metallic or not, roughness. I have the amount of falls per unit, or per meter in this case. We have the roof generators. There are different types to choose from. Let's see, for example, this one here. The tile size depends on the object you are instancing. So you basically have to create the object to scale, real world scale. Don't change the spacing if you are not changing the tile, because this is set up to work with the one we're using, basically. By default, they have a material that can be controlled from here. So as you can see, it's replacing the original tile material that may have. You can change the color, for example. The tile variation changes a bit the color per tile, and you have the roughness there. Foliage here, you can be removed. You have it active, remove. You can also have it in preview mode to save a bit of processing time. The renders will not be affected. This was created to add a bit more realism, but also to cover a bit the overlapping of the tiles in different areas. If your roof has, for example, this half a tile there, you can try to adapt a bit the geometry. I will move it just a tiny bit and remove that part. You can always realize instances and apply the modifier, so you can manually change a few details, change some positions or whatever. Let's see, for example, here we have a metallic roof. You can always change the foliage and the tiles. You can create your own collections and replace them here. Collection of tiles, collection of bridge tiles, and collection of the leaves here. For the tiles, there's if you go to the documentation, there's a guide on how you can create them. It was not the main idea originally, but since there were some users asking if they could use their own tiles, I created the guide. Custom tile objects, and you have an introduction, preparing the generic tile object, and following those steps, you could create your own set of tiles to using the generator. You can also create custom texturing for the tiles, a bit like we did with the other tiles and bricks. So the guide is also in the documentation. As you can see here, I'm using wood material just as an example to texture the tiles with variation, as you can see, even if it's the same texture on every tile. So you can read those in the documentation. We also have some rug generators with different styles, and you can use it in different shapes. I will apply this one here. Initially, they are in preview mode, so the viewport doesn't get slow. Here's the viewport calling. I will show you how it looks. Once it loads, you can move pretty much safely. But I always recommend you to, if you're not checking how it looks, to keep it like this. Here I will use another one. Those like, let's see. There's also documentation on how to use these assets. And in this case, this is using transparency. So if you don't have enough bounces, it may look a bit black in some areas. There's a lot of parameters here, but I think with the presets, you may have already enough variation, so you don't have to go through all those parameters. In this case, this specific asset already has what I mentioned, that it can replace one, but you have to target the base object, not the particles. So in this case, I'm going to do this, select the base, and apply this different one. So it will prompt if I want to replace it. I can replace it. And as you can see, in this case, we can use a texture, check the Coarse material, rag texture. In this case, it's assigned also to the object, so you can go directly to shading, rag texture, and we replace here the texture. You can also change the more advanced parameters of the material here, but in general, with the default, you will be fine. Let's see now the baking add-on. We can go to shading. And here in the end panel, you will see Sanctus Bake. Instead of the native Blender baking system that requires a lot of manual tasks, like adding an image texture, selecting the object, the image texture node, etc., and going through a lot of settings, this add-on's goal is to simplify the process. What the add-on basically does is to create maps based on the different outputs of the nodes. I exposed those values. If you go inside a node group, you will see that the same values that go inside the principal shader color is exposed to be able to bake that color. Metallic, same. Roughness, the same. And for the normal, we have to convert it to tangent mode. So first, I will show you how you can bake the materials that come with Sanctus Viz. Then we are going to see how we can bake objects that are using multiple materials. And then I will show you how you could bake basically any node output. So when you find the parameters that you're looking for and the object looks how you want, it's a good idea to bake the material so you can have faster renders and faster viewport. You can right-click the group node, go to Select Sockets for Baking, and here I will select the outputs I want to bake. Color, metallic, roughness, and normal. Okay. Here I can select the resolution for my images. I will use 2K in this case. You can go to solid view here, so it will be faster. The add-on automatically assigns a type of map. In this case, it's using base color, metallic, roughness, normal. That depends on the name. But for example, if I have any other node and I add this value other, it won't know what kind of map is. So you can always choose here if the map is available, because you cannot bake two different color maps. But here you can, for example, maybe the, I don't know, displacement or whatever. But we are not going to do that, but just trying to explain how it works. Okay, once you selected all the different options, you can just click bake. The button will change to baking while it's processing. And once it finishes, you will see the list of the baked textures here. If you click on one of them, you will see the baked texture. Of course, your object has to be UV unwrapped. Then you can manually add the textures to the shader editor one by one if you want. Or you can use this button here to add all of them at the same time already on a principal shader. So you can use it. We are going to see the procedural version. And now we are going to connect the baked version. As you can see, nothing changes because the information is now in the textures. And it will be a lot faster because it's not having to process in real time all the nodes. This will increase the viewport speed and also the renders. If you delete this, you will see the this error message because the sockets that were added are no longer there, but you can clear the baking queue. You can also, if you don't want to replace completely the material, you can also create a new one. New material, you have the bake here. You select this, connect, and now this is the baked version of the material. The details on each of the parameters and everything you need to know about the different settings, you can find it here in the documentation. This is an add-on that is shared with Sanctus library, so both add-ons have the tool included. Okay, let's say you want to bake an object with two materials at the same time. I will use this material, and also I will go to edit mode, select the eyes here. In material slots, I will add a new one, and I will assign those faces to it. Now I can select a different material and apply to slot 2. So let's change a bit more the color so we can. Okay. We will clean our queue. Let's also remove this so we don't get confused. So I can start with any of those, but I will go to slot 1, select my outputs. Okay. And now the difference is that I can go to slot 2 and start adding other outputs to my maps. For example, in base color, I want to add the color of this second material. I click the add socket and select color. I have my node group selected. Okay, now you can see warm metal DOS and warm metal 4 outputs will be baked together in the base color. We will do the same for the other maps. Metallic, roughness, and normal. I will select my object and click bake. And now, as you can see, we have two different materials. This is the faces of the eyes. Since I'm going to use just one, I will remove one of the sockets. Remove this material, create a new one. Instance my textures, connect. And now I have in one single material my two materials. If you need to adjust anything with a mapping, you can use UV map, mapping, and connect to all the textures there. Okay, let's see this. For example, this example, this is 10 meters floor, and we decide that, I don't know, this is more or less the scale that it should be. If you're going to bake something like this, it will be a waste, since this is repetitive, to just bake everything into the object, because you will need a higher resolution image to cover the entire thing. What you can do is to take the smallest part that repeats, in this case are 4 tiles, bake that into a plane, and use that texture repeated in your larger object. So we are going to do that. I will show you. This is just a tip. It's not like you have to do this. So I will assign the same material for now. We will forget about this for now. Now I want to find or scale this until I have 4 tiles, just 4 tiles. So first I will change the scale to 1. It's easier to make the calculations like this. And then I'm going to alter the size of each tile. In this case, we have a scale of 1. This is the UV map, so 0 to 1. If I have 2, it will be 0 to 2, but okay. And then we have the size of the tile, it's 0.2, so that fits 5 times in 1 meter or 1 unit. I will change the size of those tiles to 0.5. So there are 2 on each axis. And now this is the pattern that I want to repeat. So I will bake this. I go to the bake. I will do a 2K texture. And I will add my sockets here. In this case, I'm not using the height bake is for displacement, but I'm not using it. I have bump in this case selected, so to make it easier, I won't select height. Okay, go into solid view and bake. Now I will replace this material. I could create another one, but I will replace this one. We don't need the displacement. We don't need this, clear. Okay, for my small object, that's fine. Let's see my large object now. What I have to do is, in this case, is UV map, mapping, and connect everything there. And now I can change the scale. This is not important anymore for me. So now we can maybe 5, for example, and the image it's repeating, so it's lighter, and you don't need a insanely huge texture. And there we go. Same if you want to create any PBR material from any of the materials, you can do basically the same. You can bake it on a plane, save it, and use it in your objects. Okay, this is another tip. I want you to understand that this baking add-on can bake basically any output from any node, and that can be very handy if you want to bake other different maps that you may want. For example, in this case, we are going to use a material, but we want to add, for example, an ambient occlusion map. So I will add an ambient occlusion node. This is a bit advanced, but I want you to know that you have the option. This is the output. Things don't need to be connected to anything to be able to bake them. It's just if the output is there, you can bake it. So I select my node, right click, select the maps that I want. And in this case, I will add this one also. Select this sockets. These maps are recognized by the name, but this one is a custom map, so I can name it whatever I want. The other ones can be renamed if you change this to other. Okay, so in my case, I will select the samples here, and I will change my resolution. Now I'm ready to bake. The only thing that is important is that the nodes are still there if you're going to bake. Okay, once it's done, you can see this is the ambient occlusion map. I will instance my bake. And in this case, the one that is not recognized doesn't know what to do with it, so we manually add it. Occlusion. I will clear and remove this. And in this case, we are going to connect this, and we are going to use our ambient occlusion with a mixed color and multiply. So now we have a control, and we can add some ambient occlusion to our object. And this is the same for basically any node. Even if you have a PBR material and you want to bake it especially for an object, you can bake the outputs of a texture node. So the tool is there for you to get creative with it also. I will be probably releasing some videos and tutorials about the different geometry nodes assets, more in depth. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.